morning, Tom.
Good morning. Welcome to the Mayuteca program. I'm Sierra Walcott, the Domestic Violence Prevention Initiative Case Manager at the SWO Behavioral Health Department. I'm joined by Patricia Roth and Shobi Zatina. They'll introduce themselves. Today we're going to discuss coping with loss without relapse. You want to introduce yourselves?
Good morning. My name is Patricia Roth. I'm behavioral health specialist. Recently started at SWO Behavioral Health, and we want to talk about coping with grief and while maintaining your sobriety, maintaining recovery. And you could do that if you're having acute symptoms. You can call us. What is our number?
698-2106.
2106. Give us a call. We accept walk-ins for appointments, or you can call and make an appointment. And we work on dialectical therapy. It's called DBT, and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And so when you hear those terms, that's just the type of therapy that we work with. And dialectical therapy is, trying to work emotional mind and cognitive mind together. And so you create wise mind. And how you do that is that you use both instead of thinking maybe too emotionally, to making your decisions basically on every feeling that you have. You feel something, so then you act on it, you react to it, and then your cognitive is kind of like, more fact-oriented. I wouldn't say like more like a robot tone, but you're going to mix these two and learn how to combine them, use them both responsibly, and make better decisions on acting out, reacting, not acting out, but reacting, responding to a situation, instead of going out and doing something that is probably maybe you might regret, or doing some destructive behaviors. Maybe instead of paying your rent, you had a bad day. What's the point anyway? So I'm going to give up and go for broke and go out and use, or not come home, or not go to work because of all these feelings that you're feeling. Well, this way your feelings are real. Everybody has feelings. It's just how you manage them. And so at the Behavioral Health Program, that's what we want to work with individuals on how to manage emotions, how to think about what you're thinking about, how you're identify your thought process, and how those thoughts do create your behavior. So if we're thinking one way on something, then we want to think, well, is there a flip side to that? Is there something else that I could try? Even though it hurts really hard and the emotions are there and it feels like a flood, those triggers, the best thing is to do is just wait. Emotions, feelings, they generally last for 20 minutes. And so they say anything longer than 20 minutes is self-inflicted. And so basically you're carrying on that feeling, so you have to wait that feeling out and then focus on your thoughts about that feeling. I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling restless, I'm feeling annoyed, I'm feeling aggravated. These are all natural emotion feelings. Everybody feels them. I feel them out of the blue for no reason. I just feel a little irritated, but I'm not going to snap on somebody, and then that's another technique that we use. It's called turtling. It talks about how turtles, for self-defense, they snap at you and they snap. So trying to think not to to be snappy. Maybe that's how I've always done it before. Like, how can I be more gentle, more reserved, and more use my thought process on how to get over something that's probably hard to feel out. But so yeah, those are the things that we'll be working on. Those techniques. Try and keeping it simple, not to use like big words, but something simplified, and you can master that, and then always grow on from there. But so if you're feeling any kind of grief right now, you can always give us a call, schedule an appointment, or we take walk-ins as well. And so I hope to hear from you. There's a lot of exciting information that you can use to feel better, to try something, try something better. And so just on a personal experience, when I think I was like 28 years old and I was struggling with my feelings and emotions, I keep pounding the wall. I keep pounding the table, but I pay attention to signals around me, and I kind of got those of like, oh, well, maybe this information that is coming to me, I should be using it. So maybe if you're thinking that you've been thinking that you wanted some help, wanted to figure out why you're feeling the way you're doing, why you keep making the same decision over and over, and then you have regret, well, just think about like, oh, well, here's some information that I can use, and there's another technique that I can try. Doesn't mean that you're gonna, you don't have to use it forever, or you could use it forever, but it's something that you can come and learn about, and that opportunity, that service is there for you to give it a try and feel better. Well, yeah.
Thanks, Patricia. Good morning. My name is Shobi Zatina. I'm the outpatient treatment counselor for day treatment program at SWO Behavioral Health. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself before we turn it back over to Sierra. I think she was going to talk about, or did you want me to continue with grief and loss?
Yeah, I'll
Okay, you're.
Okay, so we're on the topic of grief and loss this morning, and I just wanted to talk about some definitions of grief and loss. So sometimes when we think about grief and loss, we automatically think about a death of a loved one, which that's a part of grief and loss, but we also have several other losses in our life, a lot actually. And so when we look at the losses that occur during our life, the loss of when there's separation and divorce within a family, that's a loss. And so there's all kinds of different types of losses that we discuss in our group. And I'm just excited for this group because it's going to allow us to express our feelings in a in like a small community is what we're hoping to build with this group, and to be able to share our feelings confidently and to process some of the losses that may have occurred during our lifetime. So like I said, when loss occurs when a valued person or object or situation is changed or made unacceptable so that its value is diminished or removed. So basically that's just what loss is when something that is valued is removed from your life. Mm-hmm. And that could be when you think about the first time that you lost a dog or a cat or a family pet. And so you go on throughout your life having several losses. And even when it pertains to substance abuse, we ultimately lose our drug of choice. And so we talk about that within the group too. So that's another loss that occurs when we decide to be sober and we decide to walk the red road, so to speak. We continue to have a loss in our life, and so we have to develop new coping strategies to deal with these losses that occur. And Grief, so we're talking about grief. Grief is just the reaction to loss. That's what grief is. It's the emotional reaction to loss. And Patricia was talking a lot about our emotions and the importance of emotion, because ultimately it predicts our behavior, and which ultimately leads to how the outcomes of our life and those kind of things. So we also want to talk about grief. It occurs with loss, and like I said, divorce, loss of job, a house pet, just various losses that we go through our life. So the grief and loss group that we have also talks about how we cope with that and moving through that grief and loss. And there is a process to do that, and to begin that process is the beginning of healing. So that's ultimately what treatment is about. It's about healing ourselves. It's about continuing on in this thing called life without drugs and alcohol, and to really see what the actual things that are causing us to relapse or causing us to use alcohol and drugs. And in the time that I've been working with substance abuse and in treatment centers and inpatient treatment and outpatient, one of those things that keeps us in alcohol or drugs is grief and loss. And so that's a really important thing to understand, how to maneuver through those difficult losses and difficult emotions. A lot of people have loss in our community, and whether it be a relative, a close relative, an extended relative. So we talk about maneuvering through that. There's several things that people work on during grief and loss group. So one thing that we can do to help with processing some of our loss that we've had is, number one, identifying those losses from from birth to present. And we can do that by like 5-year increments, and just be able to say, think about some of the things that you've lost throughout your life, and the death of a loved one or your family pet, and you start like at a really young age, from what you can remember, and you go through 5-year increments, say 5, 10, 15 years old, and you continue on. And that's what we call a lifeline. And that helps us to identify what kind of losses we've had. We want to think about maybe the top 3 losses that we've had within our lives, significant losses. And when we get into drug and alcohol use, we talk about several losses that occur when we start to drink, when we start to use drugs. And a loss of spiritual belief is probably a main one. And we also lose some of our emotional regulation, because it has to do with the way that we think, and ultimately that has to do with our emotional state of mind. So, and we have mental or psychological loss as well when we start to drink or do drugs as well. And sometimes we suffer from physical, for example, methamphetamine. A lot of physical symptoms occur, and deterioration of the physical body starts to take place when somebody chooses to do methamphetamine. So we have a lot of losses when we're using substances. And we talk about those losses. We want to talk about what are the things that those components of our self that we've ultimately lost. So we do the lifeline of death and loss, and then we go all the way to the present age. We talk about where we're at now, and we do weekly journaling. So there's a lot of research with journaling and how that helps us process, and we want to be able to write down. Maybe there are several topics that you can do to, like, for instance, if you've lost a loved one and you're contemplating relapse, as we know that relapse just doesn't occur in one instance, but there's things that lead up to a relapse with alcohol and drugs. And so to combat some of those relapses, we want to be able to write down some of our feelings. Maybe if you are in a year of sobriety and you recently lost a loved one, you know, that's kind of setting you back up to a possible relapse risk. And so maybe you can jot down, you know, things that you missed most about that person. Maybe some things you don't, but just to be able to jot down some journal writing, how you met or grew from the relationship. There's different topics that you could write upon, and then anything you want them to know or things that you wish to express or feelings or how you're coping now. You could even talk about that with your journal writing. And this is for you, and this is for how you're processing those losses. So extending forgiveness and including yourself, that's another thing that you could do, is just extending forgiveness to yourself, because we know that with grief and loss, that's one of the stages, is, you know, possibly feeling guilty about the loss. And so, you know, being able to forgive yourself with that. And then memories you'll always treasure. So these are just some journal topic writings that you could possibly do on a weekly basis. It might even take you 2 weeks, you know, just depending. And don't overwhelm yourself, but to be able to just jot down some things that you're trying to start the process of grief and loss. And so there's a lot of things that we could work on, and that's what we do in Grief and Loss Group. There's a lot of assignments that go in on a weekly basis. We work right there within the group, and that ultimately does prevent some sort of relapse, because you're able to process, and that's what it's about. I don't know if I have anything else to say, but I just want to let you guys know that we are here, and like Patricia was saying, our day treatment program is 698-2110, and if you'd like to speak with me or Dion, the other counselor, we're here for support. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sierra. I think she had some announcements.
Well, thank you, Shovia and Patricia, for all of that information. All of us, you know, struggle with grief in our lives, and I don't think I've ever met someone, including myself, that is in recovery, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years, that you don't maybe consider that the relapse when you're going through pain, you know. So it's good to have these skills, and even just to know that there's resources out there may help, you know. So speaking of resources, on May 31st, we're having a self-care fair at the rotunda of the admin building. It's going to address a lot of things that we talked about today, coping skills and other things. And it's collaboration between the SWO Behavioral Health Department, Healthy Start, Alive Roberts County, Indian Health Service, Public Health Nursing. And there will be about 9 presentations. And the goal of the day is for participants to walk away with new and varied coping skills, as well as ways to de-stress. We all have moments when the stress gets too much, from the work, the kids, the spouse, our families. And personally, I am always looking for different things that will work for me. Some examples of the presentations are adverse childhood experiences. Sorry, I banged the table too. This booth will be discussing what are adverse childhood experiences, and basically, real quick, those are the traumas that we endure when we're children, and the traumas that we hopefully aren't re-traumatizing our children. Yeah. Carrying on to our children. The cycle. So it's an understanding of how those traumas affect us and how they affect our children. There's going to be a presentation on coping skills. It'll give participants examples of different ways to cope with stressful issues and situations. Also, there'll be a booth on effects of stress. This presentation will give participants an understanding of how stress actually affects you physically and emotionally. And there are a lot of symptoms of stress. You know,
Can you name a few?
I'll go with my symptoms when I'm stressed.
So that
Migraines, you know, physical pain, like if a fibromyalgia patient, you know, those types of pains, sweating, curling up in a ball, sleeping for hours and hours, you know, those types of things that you can be physically affected by. So those are, you know, that's going to give you an example of how your stress is affecting your body and why it's important to de-stress and to have coping skills and have self-care. So the last thing on the list of presentations will be a self-care plan. We'll have developed papers, and Dion, see, she needs to come every time. There's a way that you can develop a safety plan, and that's your own personal ways that for self-care. You know, whether it's, you know, taking a quick nap or stepping outside or whatever you find helpful from the self-care fair that you've gotten ideas for. You can jot it down. Maybe even take a couple more papers so that you can change it later. Or, you know, that's just for your personal use of what you've learned and how you can implement it in your life. And this fair is open to all community members, tribal employees, casino employees, parents, kushis, uganas. I think all of us can take away something from this day. And there may even be massages. That's not confirmed yet, but...
I want massages.
I totally would go.
So, yeah, and if you have any questions about this topic or any other topic dealing with behavioral health or substance uses, you can contact the 698-2110 for Shobi and Dion and others, and 698-2106 for Patricia and Dr. Gail Mason. And thank you for tuning in to the Mayuteca show. We'll see you next Thursday.